Welcome back, everyone, to another week here at DroneDJ. Sorry we missed you all last week. As you see, I'm still in the middle of setting up my studio here. Now, circling back to our news updates this week, we've got a new rumored release about DJI's FPV goggles for that Senior Hoop drone we suspected several weeks ago. Then we also have a couple firmware updates from DJI, as well as two new BVLOS stories. And of course, this is the week we saw a new product from DJI, the new RS3. It's not a drone, but it is a pretty cool gimbal. And then finally, we have a video of the week for you. So Kirk, let's start with the FPV goggles, because I don't think I quite got that story.
Yeah, so Deals Drone shared an image stating that there will be stating that the new images for the DJI Avanta, the mini Cine Whoop drone that DJI is rumored to be releasing. And it's obviously a squished down photo, in Photoshop type photo of DJI's FPV drone goggles. I think after he shared it, another outlet kind of like said that they're clearly fake, and then he kind of like defended like what they are. Like, this is dead. They're not actually the photos, but this is what they're going to look like. So the changes that you can tell are that it's going to be more of a thinner goggle. It's not going to be so, thick, vertically wise. And then instead of having 4 antennas, you kind of like on the top and bottom on the left and right side. So they're going to just have 2 pointing up the top. So I don't know how I feel about the antennas. They seem a little kind of more out there and easy to break off, but maybe that's with heavy FPV goggles. They're kind of sticking out anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But
I mean, it's not the first time DJI is reusing some of their, previous controllers or goggles for a different drone, right? So when they're releasing a new one, I wouldn't be surprised they're just doing some minor modifications on the previous accessory.
I mean, they're good goggles. Like, I've heard that they're really solid goggles. Like, it doesn't make sense that they wouldn't, change too much of it. Just kind of maybe like probably make them a little bit smaller. Since this is probably going to be more of a cheaper drone, like probably not like a cheap toy drone, but more of like a a lower or more cost effective drone, I guess you can call it. So
I guess we'll see. I hope it's in line with the pricing with Mini 2 right now, with 500 and change.
that would be nice. That would be a nice price point to hit, especially for like, I mean, for Cinewhip, they're relatively small. Like, they shouldn't, the cameras are not huge on them, and probably the biggest part is going to be the goggles, with having the screens in them and whatnot. So that's probably going to be more the most expensive part of it versus the little drone.
Yeah, I have to say I wasn't really a FPV person, just because the DJI FPV drone, it was fairly large, for me to fly through trees. But with Cine Hoop, especially with the enclosed propellers, I would definitely prefer using Cine Hoop drone for sure. It will be less costly when I crash. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I hopefully these are going to be pretty durable drones. I mean, Cinewhips are not necessarily meant to be babied. They're kind of meant to kind of get out there and get some really interesting shots and take some risk with tree branches or through windows and stuff like that. So hopefully this is not going to be like a $500 hit a tree branch and you break off one of the propellers, because that'd be really bad.
I mean, I think propellers aren't that bad. It's just I hope the propeller, I guess the guard, right? Yeah, the frame. Because I broke my FPV arm on the FPV drone first couple flights, so that wasn't fun. Okay, moving on with the story. We did see a couple of firmware updates. So this is one of them on the Mavic 3 firmware update, and there was another one on the Air 2 and Air 2S, which we didn't really see any major changes. But what's interesting on the Mavic 3 update is it says it's to fix the IMU calibration issue. I didn't have an issue with the IMU. Did you?
No, I don't know, because I haven't used it in like a week. When the 700 firmware came out, I tested and made sure that the GPS issue was fixed, which it was, and kind of looked at a little bit of other settings, and then I kind of like put it away, and I actually allowed a friend to borrow it for just testing out, and he couldn't get to fly at all because of some issue, and he didn't really go into detail. I didn't really ask. He just switched over to his Air 2S, and I used one of my other drones for the work, and maybe this was the issue. I haven't updated mine yet, so maybe I can try to replicate the issue, and maybe this will be it. But pretty much the issue ended up being your IMU. He had to like recalibrate your IMU before every flight, which for DJI has been fairly solid. Like you had to recalibrate it maybe once, every so
Well, a
often.
quick tip on IMU calibration, you're supposed to do that indoors or at least on a very
Yeah.
stable surface, right? You can't touch the surface or let the drone move when you're doing the IMU calibration.
Mhm.
So it's always a little tricky if you're trying to do it out on the field.
Yeah.
We had
But
a we had a 3 hour, almost 3 hour flight day right after we updated the Mavic 3 firmware that fixed the GPS issue, and
hmm,
we had no issues with it. Like 3
hmm.
hours flight day, everything worked out fine. So I guess it depends on the drone.
Yeah, and DJI for most part, like you calibrate that thing at the start of your day or your start your flight time, and you don't have to do it ever again. It's
Yeah.
really solid. I'll tell you on the other hand, like I have to calibrate it after every I want to fly it every single time. Like it's really annoying. But DJI, it's kind of weird that that there's an issue with the IMU calibrating, but it's been fixed. Hopefully in a quick update. It's having this one was it wasn't a like we'll see if we can fix in 2 weeks, um, in two
Well, they
months or
fixed
something
it
like that.
before I even knew it was an
Yeah,
issue.
they fixed it before I even knew it was an issue. So
There you
bravo to
go.
DJI for getting a quick firmware out.
Okay, we've got two more BVLOS updates, and I feel like we need to have a pool of how many BVLOS stories or this delivery stories do we cover until, we actually spot the first drone delivery or have one of our audience to have a verified drone delivery by a customer. We
I
definitely need to start a pool.
I'll have to talk with Scott, who was before me, and see if he ever had anyone talk to him about it, because I've ever since, yeah, for the past year, I have never heard known or have seen any sort of BVLOS when it comes to drone delivery or a drone in the box type operation. Like never. So I have no like. I'm super excited for the people who get to test these things out, but I don't see anyone sharing it. So
Especially, I mean, with this, it says Amazon is to begin free drone delivery service in California. You would think, those people are probably more social media savvy, right, than the
mhm.
most of us. So you would think with this new update, maybe very soon we would see customers actually posting drone delivery photos or videos.
I wonder. Yeah, I wonder. Maybe it's getting closer. I don't know what city it's in. It seems like it was it a smaller city. You looked up the city. I don't remember
Yeah,
what city it was.
Lockport, California, and I did check. So this is about 100 miles east of San Francisco, so not along
Hmm.
the coastline, so not
Yeah.
not really with the major population,
Not
right?
really. Yeah. So maybe these people just like don't use it. Like maybe they're like going to these issues and they're getting like one or two or something like that a week. It's like no one does it.
Yeah, and
Uh
like it says, the service is expected to launch sometime later this year.
yeah, okay. So maybe probably next year. But
Very promising.
very promising to say sometime later this year, because that's always like a we're gonna do it. Just something technically is not working right. Um so
Well, we can see there's a related article in here already. Amazon delivery drone crash sparked acres of wildfire in Oregon. So that's not
mhm.
really a good news for drone delivery.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's like I mean, you're gonna have these hiccups early on, and that was an interesting story that happened like that was a few months ago. But um, actually, that happened like a year ago, and then the story came out who it was like a few months ago. But I don't know. It's like we'll get it eventually. Maybe one day I'll come to Milwaukee area. Like I feel like we're a small enough city to where like it would make sense to move into
yeah.
a major like we're a large enough population, but we're not like Chicago. Like so, I don't know. Maybe we'll get it
And
one
I
day.
feel like that's an interesting accident as well, because normally people worried about, drones crashing down, hurting someone, right? Crashing into cars,
Mhm.
damaging someone's properties, but causing, acres wide wildfire. I mean, that's pretty scary to me because, forest fire it's actually pretty dangerous. So originally you would think it's low risk to test flights in acres of forest because no one is there. But if
Mhm.
you start a wildfire, if you have a crash, I mean, those batteries in the drone, if you use lithium polymer batteries, they really they burn white fire, right? They're white hot, so the temperature is really high. And I guess depending on which season you're testing this, that aspect I have to say, to me, now that I think about it, yeah, that's pretty high risk.
And it is pretty dry out west. I just saw something today about it. I guess there's a drought or something like that still going on out west, or at least there's drought conditions. So it doesn't really matter where you're going to be flying. That it's going to be probably relatively dry, grass and dry foliage. So yeah,
That is
hopefully we
one
don't
factor.
see a lot of this more. Hopefully that was kind of like a issue that they had fixed. So
Or maybe we start seeing, instead of drones carrying parachute, maybe they start carrying some kind of fire extinguisher on board. I
I
think that
mean,
may be more useful.
there are like technologies where like if it gets hot enough, like there's like little balls that you can throw into like a dumpster fire that like once it gets hot enough it explodes, and it's like kind of like a fire extinguisher like grenade. So
Yeah,
like there's definitely something you can add in here. I wonder like what I didn't look and see like what caused that crash, but like I wonder like I mean crashes. I mean it could be anything. It could be a GPS issue. It could be like I mean
you never
when you're talking
know.
about a human piloted drone, not even drone or aircraft, like a bird strike or a any sort of issue with the equipment can kind of be like fixed while you're flying it because you're flying the aircraft. But like with a drone, like because they're smaller and like there's not a whole lot of more redundancy unless you're talking about like eight rotor drones. Like if you hit a bird and it like takes out one of your rotors or it takes out an airframe, like your thing is going down, it's going to crash.
And plus, this is an experimental prime air delivery, right? When it
Yeah.
comes to testing, it's always you're trying to find out what could go wrong.
Hmm.
So almost certain tests are either going out deliberately looking for trouble, right?
Yeah. It's definitely it's gonna be such a big challenge to overcome, but it looks like more and more companies are seeing some success with growth in adding more delivery areas, like Walmart down in down the south, adding more areas where they're gonna do deliveries. So it's obviously they're overcoming the problems.
And I find it always interesting to compare accident data, not just to say, hey, drones can cause accidents, but
Hmm.
how about comparing that to vehicle delivery? What's the accident rate there, right?
Mm.
What about, air delivery? What's the fatal rate there, right? So I think it's relativity, relevance is always key.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's a lot of delivery drivers out there. And I wonder, like, there's got to be a good amount of accidents, but and what is it compared to drones? So,
So do we trust the drones or do we trust drivers?
yeah, true.
Another story on beyond visual line of sight flight, and this is one of my personal interests, is drone in the box. Because
Hmm.
I'm so into private property security, right? I want to have the drones patrolling my
I could
70
see
acre
you
site,
on your compound, just having drones just fly out and just do
right?
security for you.
Well, first thing I'm gonna put up is I'm gonna put up signs along the entrance to say areas patrolled by drones. No
And there is
trespassers allowed.
I did see a taser drone talked about earlier this week. So you can even if someone does get in, you have a taser. So
Yeah, there you go.
you go
Well,
pursuit.
definitely first thing I want is a public announcement system on the drone, right?
Hmm.
And yelling at the trespassers, get off my property. So
Yeah.
this is, I believe, I mean, to me, this is the fourth drone in the box system I've seen, and we're still expecting DJI's drone in the box system. They said Q4 this year, so towards the end of the year. But I did see two other drone in the box solutions, and this one specifically has acquired the FAA BVLOS waiver. So
Hmm.
that should definitely be interesting to see. And I feel like if we talk about beyond visual line of sight, on a large open site where it's contained, it's easier to geofence and to program your drone. It's more of a contained testing environment,
Hmm.
right? Rather than just say going out to fly through, thousands of kilometers or acres.
This is like much easier than like trying to figure out like okay, this is where you take off, but go find this address and deliver a package there. Like you're not necessarily like learning to traverse like neighborhoods and get around trees. You kind of like know where everything is, and you can kind of like get pretty good at avoiding. Hey, there's a tree here. That tree's gonna stay here for like ever. So like don't fly around this area of this tree. Like
Yeah.
kind of like a small version of of like a VFR sectional like chart of like all the
Hmm.
obstacles that are in the area. Just avoid these. So and
Yeah,
there's a lot of
definitely.
places that would totally use this, even more smaller places that like if you don't want to like have someone go check the roof of like your building. You know, you just have a little drone that pops up and checks the roof of your building, like if you're downtown or something like that. So,
And I find business-wise, it's easier for me to calculate really return
mhm.
on investment because I know how much it costs me if I want to hire private security or how much it costs me a year to have a private security guard, right?
Mhm.
So it's easier to calculate return on investment for sure.
Oh, easily, yeah.
So along the new product news, we did see a new product release from DJI, and this week is not a drone. It is the DJI RS3, which is the Ronin gimbal. I still have the original Ronin somewhere in my studio, like the original Ronin. I have to say, my team really thought this new RS3 looks interesting, and one of the
Mhm.
main reasons is actually because of this new LiDAR rangefinder, right? So Alex, from my
Yep.
technical side, he's really excited about the rangefinder, especially, focus is always a big thing for video, especially if you move around with the gimbal. So
Yeah.
accurate focus tracking is definitely important.
Yeah, and they kind of changed up the naming scheme. So there's no longer, so we had the RSC2 and the RS2, and the RSC2 is kind of like the smaller version of it, and now it's just the RS3 and RS3 Pro. Makes a little bit more sense. Definitely, definitely a little bit more of a simpler naming scheme. And the RS3 is pretty much what the RSC2 was, kind of like the bigger brother of it, and then the RS3 Pro is kind of what the larger version of it. So, and
And it's
my
kind of
favorite part.
interesting because if you, I don't know if you saw some of the original gimbals, like the first free fly gimbal that goes on
Mhm,
a bigger drone or the DJI original Ronin, because they were more of a cage design
mhm,
and then your handheld is on the cage. So
mhm.
when you work on the film set for like 10, 12 hours a day, it's always challenging because the entire weight is on your arms.
Yeah.
So either you work the body system, right, to basically distribute the weight to your back, or it just makes it carrying it really challenging. But
Mhm.
if you look at the newer gimbal design, like the RS2 or RS3, the weight is you're carrying it by the handle, and then you have the whole camera on the gimbal platform suspended at the front. So it makes it easier to carry on set for sure.
Yeah, this is actually, it's perfect timing that this came out this week because I'm more of a photography person, so we don't really use gimbals for photography. I know some people who do. I don't. Um, but I over the weekend I did some video work for the first time with a friend of mine who needed a second shooter, and I used the RS2 for a few hours in the morning. And so kind of like I'm like I already like, oh man, like okay, I guess I finally know like what the RS2 is like, so I can guess I can finally figure out like what the RS3 would be nice to have. And one of the things that I saw that was kind of super cool was the auto locking. You can like press a button and it kind of like locks up all the arms for transportation instead of like fidgeting with all the locks to get it all back into place and undoing them. And I hopefully the balancing would be a little bit easier on this. I mean the carbon fiber is great for lightweight, but it's also not extremely smooth to like get fine, slow movement of especially that back arm to kind of like balance it. It was like put a whole bunch of weight against it, and all of a sudden, like I just need to move it like a quarter of an inch, and I just it slips and goes like an inch and a half.
It takes practice
It
for
does.
sure. Any gimbal, it's like the old school Steadicam, right? It takes
Mhm,
practice to get to know how to move with it, to kind of compensate for sometimes like for the gimbals, it's the Z axis, it's up and
mhm.
down axis that you have to compensate for. But yeah, it's like a certain pattern you have to walk.
Yeah, yeah. It was a whole lot of learning experience. So like I'm excited to see if you get to get some hands on with the RS3 one day in the future if I ever decide to get one or
You know what? To me, I don't need more biceps. I'm happy with my Osmo Pocket 2.
I saw someone with one of the guys who did an interview with Elon Musk over the weekend. He literally recorded the entire interview with an iPhone and Osmo Pocket, like the entire thing, which was interesting. So
Yeah, I love the
um,
Osmo Pocket. It's great. You
it
just
worked.
carry it around, and the thing is, it's also inconspicuous. It's great for vlogging because people don't
Mhm.
even notice you're doing it, right?
That's true. That's true. Does that shoot vertical or no?
No, I don't
Okay.
believe, I don't shoot vertical on it.
Mm.
So I'm not sure if it has or if there's a
Now
new firmware update.
that's how I can see with the new Pocket because I think there's rumor of a new Pocket coming out this year. Um, Yeah, because not the Osmo Mobile. I think it's Osmo
Well,
Pocket that was rumored.
all they have to do is take the gimbal and the camera down from Mini 3
That's what I
and
was gonna
put
say.
it, yeah.
All you have to do is use the Mini 3 gimbal and camera, and you're
There you
set.
go, and you have the vertical mode. It's perfect. I
Yeah.
would buy that like in a heartbeat.
F1.7. You know,
Yep.
it's a great camera. All you gotta do is put that on a mobile on a little handheld thing.
Yeah,
It'll
then
work
I'm
perfectly.
in. Count me in for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a video of the week for everyone, and I'll share with you in a second why I thought this video was interesting. So this is a test video of a eVTOL air taxi. So essentially, this is the air taxi a lot of us had been, waiting for. So let me start. There we go.
And it's really interesting to see, everything they've added in here with the you can go ahead and play it while we talk over it. But
Yeah,
like,
let me stop the audio. There we go. So just the one thing I wanted to mention before we move along is I really like they're displaying the specs.
yes,
Some of the test specs. Like to me, from a research perspective, anytime you're showing test video, you have to disclose your specs, or at least whatever specs you're able to disclose to the public. Otherwise, the test video doesn't really make any sense to the audience. So if we look at here, it has, proof of concept, has the make and model, regular transmission test flight, has the date. What's interesting is if you look at the takeoff time. So Alex earlier was pointing out to say it's only 7.5 minutes for the duration. But if you look at the range, 14 kilometers, and I said, where are you going to go in any major city? 14 kilometers, in under 7.5 minutes. I don't think you can do that in any major city, right?
I mean, not even on like a bike. I mean, not even like, I know some New Yorkers who just, they're really good at riding bikes around town, but I don't think you can get that far on a bike. So
if you need to go from point A to point B ASAP, then this definitely shows the value in air taxi for sure.
Really, yeah. I was thinking this would be really nice if one of these companies like demoed this at CES. Because like coming from the hotel because we got a further away hotel because they've save money, but like to go from like the hotel there on like one of these things would be a breeze. I mean, and they have Tesla's not Tesla, but Boring Companies, Hyperloop or not Hyperloop, just the Boring Company tunnel with the Teslas, and that was cool, but that only goes around the convention center, but like nothing to like the other hotels.
Yeah, like shuttle.
Like,
this for shuttle.
Yeah, like there's you have to get on a bus pretty much, but this would be like really cool for them to start demoing this there.
Agreed.
If it's ready. So
yeah, I mean, EHang is doing a lot of that in Southeast Asia for tourism, right, for sightseeing. And I have to say, personally, I prefer this configuration than EHang's configuration, because if you look at EHang's, the propellers are closer to the passenger. And personally, I don't really like that. I like to sit in a, like, if you look at this, it's enclosed cabin, and just count how many propellers. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 8 propellers on the top, and plus it has a forward pushing propeller at the back. So that does make me feel a bit safer, I have to say.
Yeah, it seems a lot more like you have redundancy in the propellers. So like in case you're not worried about something breaking or failing. And you're not like watching it turn like inches away, hoping that like it doesn't like just something happens and you're in the propeller. So it was also really cool to see all the data they had on this, because
I really like that. So if you're a geek like us, then definitely watch the video.
I mean, even just for like, just showing the video from like from the sky or just from the inside, like, I mean, even the inside camera is super cool, so you can kind of get to see like what
I
you're
like the
look like
multi-camera action for sure. Like it
the
makes
nice
me
big
rewatch
screen
the
in the
video,
middle,
right?
like the the view isn't like, I mean, his view is only facing forward, so and you can see now how like the rotors like kind of like lock and like stop and kind of go and lock in place,
because it's
which is
cruising.
cool.
So that saves energy for sure.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool that you can kind of see that in this video, and hopefully I wish in the next videos they can kind of like have like something that moves around, like maybe like put like a remote controlled gimbal in it or something like that. I mean, maybe if you get super far away, you might not be able to control it, but let's be able to point off like what the view looks like from the bottom window, from the side, or something like that, because it does look super cool up there.
This makes me want to sit in one. I have to say, like most of the air taxis, I'm afraid to sit in one.
Yeah, like a lot of the videos also like they look just super like basic. Like they're just is it flying around for a little bit. It's like usually just like a minute or something like that. And
And
this
you know
one
what? That's
looks
yeah,
very more like, yeah, we've got our stuff like together. Like this is a long duration flight. This is gonna be probably longer than most of their flights,
that's a
probably.
good point because you know what, for the audience or for the potential customers, you're building up confidence about the team behind it,
Hmm.
not just looking at the air taxi flying, right? This is actually a really good marketing strategy, I have to say, because it really helps to build confidence about the brand and the team behind the product.
Hmm. The only thing would be nice to see more would be more of the cabin, like see how flushed out their cabin is. Of course
Hmm.
you can see the screen there, but like we want to see what seats they are, like what's the seating arrangement in there,
I wonder
how those
if they
seats
don't
gonna look.
show. I wonder if it's because they didn't finish all the interior design.
Yeah, like that, which is totally fair if they haven't. I mean, it's still in development, and that's probably one of the last things they're gonna do is kind of put together the interior, since that's the less technical part of it, other than
Hmm.
probably weight. But it's nice to at least see like the TV and be like, oh yeah, like they're far along. Like they even have like kind of like the start of the interior going. So which you don't see a lot of other than renders with other companies
Let
or
me just go
mock-ups.
all the way to the end. Okay. Yeah, there's no interior showing. It just goes to landing.
Yeah, no, you can't really see through the window either. I mean, it looks like there could be seats through the glass, but I can't really tell. Too
Well, I'll
close.
put the video link in the description down below, and let me stop sharing. There we go. Okay, so that's all the news we've got for you this week. Just to quickly recap, let me look at my cheat sheet. So I can't even remember all the stories we covered. So we talked about the leak of DJI's potential, Cine Hoop FPV drone. The goggles, we talked about the leak for the goggles that's going to be compatible with the drone. We looked at a couple of new firmware updates from DJI for Mavic 3 and the Air 2 and Air 2S. We covered two more beyond visual line of sight stories, and just so everyone knows, we're gonna start the pool on how many stories do we cover until someone spots, an actual drone delivery. We talked about the new RS3 product from DJI, the new gimbal, and then at the end we wished a very promising, air taxi, and hopefully at some point me and Kirk get to sit in one. So that's all the news we got for you this week, and we will see you all back here next week.